Okay. My name is Jose Casal. I'm the chair of the BCS Agile Specialist Group, and I also work for RADTAC as a Kanban trainer, Agile Project Management trainer, Scrum consultant, and anything Agile. I'm going to be talking about change adoptions and how we can make them work, and more importantly, how we can make them last. Because things that we see normally is that many change adoptions, after a while, or many agile adoptions, after a while they stop working or people abandon them. So I'm going to be talking about why, how, and what we do this. I'm going to start with the takeaways that I'd like to talk about, and it's going to be for me is that it's change adoptions. We need to keep remembering that it's about the people and the culture, okay, of the organization that we are. Change comes from the people, and it's their behaviors is what forms the culture of the organization, okay? So it's how we behave what makes the culture happen. And obviously, if we want to make change perdurable or lasting, we need to make sure that the change needs to be people-centric. So that's one. The other thing I'd like to talk is about, again, Lean and Kanban. We talk about evolution rather than revolution. And we see all of us, we don't resist changing. We are changing all the time as individuals. What we normally resist is being forced to change when someone decides that we are going to change for us, okay? And that is a quote from Peter Senge. And finally, and I think we've covered this topic today several times, is again about the value of leadership over management, okay? In order to do change, we need to do leadership, and management many times will fail because it demands that we change to an imposed system. So it's going to similar topics here. So that's the takeaways. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is why do we, for example, from an Agile perspective, why do we adopt Agile? Why I ask this question is because many times we go to many organizations that someone has decided that, for example, we're going to become Agile, okay? And you ask the people in the organization, why? What is the vision behind doing this adoption? Why is the reason behind doing this change? And they don't know. They say, why are we doing that? Why do we do, for example, Scrum, or why do we do any method? And they say, just because Scrum is popular, because it's the latest thing, because it's going to be great. But there is no real vision behind it. And so if we put it back to that diagram from Ralph Stacey, it's about, we keep talking that, I don't want to go too basic, yeah, but it's just the fact that we need to change many times, and we need to do Agile because we work in complex and complicated environments. And therefore, we need to have a system that allows us to respond to change and to respond to uncertainty in our environment. If I go to the traditional organizations, do you recognize the traditional waterfall when we have all the different steps and everything? What has happened a lot in most organizations is that we have reflected the way we do or we set up our organizations to reflect exactly how we used to do the work. So we had all the teams of analysts, the teams of architects, the teams of developers, the teams of testers, and so on, okay? And we created organizational waterfalls. These waterfalls, or these silos, obviously, because we are all human beings, and human beings are very tribal, we compete. And in competing, we're going to end up competing against the other groups. We want to be the best many times, and many times we will be the best by trying to beat the other teams, okay? That generates friction, that generates problems. Feel free to disagree with me if you don't agree with any what I'm saying. What we are proposing with Agile, Kanban, Lean, and the empirical process is that we need to get those cross-functional teams where we get all the skills and we get all the capability to deliver value for the company or for our organizations. And stop doing the traditional pass the bucket activity that, we pass it from analysts to architects and then we don't talk again. And then we pass it to developers and we don't talk again, and so on and so. So we need to do change many times. We want to improve the way we do things. What is the definition of insanity? Yeah. So, yes. Doing the same thing over and over again and always expecting the same results, okay? So we are trying to do things in a different way. We're trying to do, to change our world to become better and to improve the way we do things. So going, you all recognize this, the Agile Manifesto. So I'm not gonna go into any detail, but what we're trying to do, or we have been trying to do for the last 10 years and learning from what has been going for many more decades, is to just ensure that we deliver better value, we have better relationships with our customers, we respond to change, and essentially we have a much more fruitful professional career and experience at work. Something that we can be proud of. I find it very, very frustrating that as an IT industry, we keep having this track record, we have had this track record and this popularity that we are always late, we're always over budget, and what we deliver doesn't work. As a professional IT, I find it, I want to change that. I want to make things better for me, for my teams, for the people that I work with. And, that's one of the reasons why I fully align to Agile, and I believe in what we're doing. So the question that I usually will ask is that, do we have a compelling vision for Agile? These things that we're talking about should be compelling vision, but do we have a compelling vision that is relevant to our organization? Why do we need to change in our organization rather than just changing for the sake of changing? From the perspective of Agile, the possible benefits that have been promised to us, and they not always happen, they're just possible, is that we can have a reduced time to market, we could have increased quality, we could reduce the waste of our organization, be much more productive, much more efficient in how we spend our time. We can be a lot more predictable, and finally to have a lot better morale and be more engaged. So those are if we can achieve those things, or when we achieve those things, they're great things to work in. They are great things to achieve. Okay, but why are we doing the change? Yeah, that was my first question. I'm going to talk about how next. What's the most difficult to change in any organization? Culture. People. Any other ideas? It's a question that I usually ask. Absolutely right. People and culture are related. I think the most difficult thing to change in any organization starts with me, with the individual. And normally when we start talking about, many times when we talk to people in organizations, say, okay, we want to adopt Agile, we want to become better. What many times people are saying is that we want the rest of the organization to change for us. So I get many times we go to a manager or a leader in the organization that says, okay, we're gonna do a change program, but it's almost for the rest of the people to change. In order to change an organization, in order to change the culture, we have to be prepared to start changing ourselves. We are not gonna be exactly the same person at the end of it. Does that make sense? Yeah? So change starts from within. And from the acceptance that, in order to, if we want the rest of the organization to change with us, we've got to be the role models. We have to be the people that exhibit the behaviors that we want others to replicate or others to mirror on, so that the culture establishes or changes with us. Okay? And change is not easy. Okay? You've seen the J curve many, many times. The typical things that we will see is that, the expectation that I have is that, okay, we send someone to a training course, or we have a consultant in, and following day, things are going to be, we're going to start getting better from our present state to whatever our desired state. So if we do an analogy, it could be, we're going to be really big change. Today we are waterfall, tomorrow we're going to start doing Agile. And I've seen organizations that they do this. They send 20 people on a training course, say CSM course, and they almost expect that the following day they're going to be doing Scrum in a really smooth way. It doesn't happen. What happens first? It starts getting worse, yeah? And sometimes we expect that getting worse is not that big. Actually, the bigger the change, the more fundamental the change, the bigger that dip is going to be. And this is a period of extreme vulnerability. Yeah? As individuals, when we start changing, we feel uncomfortable, don't we? Because it's something new, it's something that we are learning, and not feel so proficient about it. Yeah? So that's a very, very extreme period. Quite importantly, many times we do this, especially in Agile, especially in Scrum, sometimes we've done the course, we have read a book or something like that, and we go and say, yeah, it's so conceptually, so simple. Let's go for it. Yeah, we can all be, from tomorrow morning, we're going to do stand-ups, and we're going to have a product owner, we're going to have a Scrum Master. Conceptually, so simple. It is bloody hard to do it. We all know that. Okay? So what happens many times is that we lose patience and we lose business determination in doing this. And what happens is many times that either we don't achieve as much as we thought, we could potentially abandon the change. I've seen organizations, very, very big gas energy company in the UK that recently said, we're not going to do Agile anymore. Okay? Or even worse, we changed or we disrupted our organization so much that this could actually just fall off a cliff. We could have made our whole business unviable by doing a big change. Okay? Karl Marx, in his day, suggested or said that a beginner who's learning a new language always translate back into his original language, in his mother tongue. Okay? So if we're doing a change while we are learning until we really interiorize the new skills, practices, we get experience, we are translating back to what we had. Okay? So if we want to do a big change, or we want to do any sort of change, do we have a change program? Do we have something that can help us navigate and have navigate that period of uncertainty, of vulnerability, that dip in our performance? Do we have something that we can refer to see how we are doing? Do we got people in the organization that can assist us? Do we have our own coaches, internal or external coaches, and so on and so on? If we're doing a big change, I'm talking about change programs, for example, when we face as human beings a big change, how do we normally try to make it more bearable in our lives? Normally what we do is to try to make the problem smaller, try to break it into small steps. And this is where I like to bring the idea of Kaizen and continuous improvement. So we start with our current state, whatever that is. Let's say that it's a waterfall environment or a traditional environment or a more or less agile environment, doesn't matter. And it's the idea of bit by bit improving, finding the next most important issue affecting our organization and improve it. Stabilize that, find the next one, improve. Next one, improve. And by doing a small step change, what we can do is that we can all be part of it. Everyone can be tasked in doing small changes. Okay? And what we don't know is that where this journey is going to take us. Yeah? The desired state is to get better, to continuously improve. We're not defining this, we're going to go for method X to method Y. We're going to go from wherever we are today to a future that will be better for us. And we're going to do that constantly, regularly. Is that okay? For me, these sort of things, the essential enablers for this change and these transformations are going to be doing the evolution bit by bit rather than a big revolution that is going to unsettle us. It's going to be making this part of the people and the culture, you said that as well, ensuring that this is a collective journey where we are all part of it. Because if it's not a collective journey, then what I said at the beginning, people resist being changed, but we don't resist changing ourselves. When we are part of this journey, we will be much more engaged in doing the change. And I would suggest that we got experience coaching that has seen it, that has the bruises and the scars, and can guide us or help us spot when we're going to go into any sort of trouble. Okay, doesn't mean that it's going to change it for us, but it can help us, just get through the stickier points. Cool. So, Lean Kanban, we say start where you are now. Let's understand where we are now. And I'm going to postulate that we are in a, if we go back to the project constraint, so we look at that. Let's say that we are in a traditional environment. And even if we are many times looking at, especially in Agile, many Agile teams are still living within fairly traditional organizations, okay? So when we're looking just very briefly traditionally, we will look normally at, we have a set of features that we need to deliver, and as it happens, time and the costs keep expanding, keep changing, so we go over time, we go over cost, and the quality usually gets compromised because we never have time to do testing, yeah, for example. If we're looking at a more agile approach, a more empirical approach, what we do say is like, okay, let's fix the time, let's fix the cost, and flex the features. So with that in mind, and if I sort of like move the waterfall teams in a way to sort of like concept to cash business flow, so we have some sort of like sales or ideas making, some, how we produce our next activities we're going to do. We have the BAs, the architects, the developers, testers, ops, support. In a traditional organization, where does usually, which group would you not say that usually things like Agile or Scrum have started in? Developers? Is that your experience normally? A lot of, many times, especially with the Scrum or many or other Agile things, they have started is usually the technical teams who have started, the devs or testers, but let's argue that is the test. What I have experienced many times and I've seen many times is that we create an anomaly within an organization that is still thinking quite traditionally. So we may have the traditional way of thinking about work, we revert that, and then we go back to traditional ways of thinking, okay? Even if we are doing, and I'm not saying that it's just developers, if we have a good Agile team or a good team in general, we'll have all the different functions. But for the example, yeah, if we create a team that is doing better, is improving, is delivering better software, all those things. If that team is still in an organization that is not aligned, there is a misalignment, that team is misaligned in the way they think and behave and act and respond to challenges to the rest of the organization, that can be seen as an anomaly. That can be seen almost like a virus that has to be fought. And this is the sort of thing that personally, when I've done, when I've been, gone to work with teams, I've seen many times. Yeah, relatively good Agile teams which are fighting the organization. They're trying to struggle. They're struggling to fit in an organization that doesn't think the same way that the team does. And many times I hear, for example, like team managers, that they come and say, okay, so my team is now using, say, Scrum, and I don't understand them anymore. Or they're using Kanban, whatever method, yeah? I don't understand anymore. They don't talk to me the way I want. I need them to still do reporting, so they're still struggling. What I will say is that what we have is just a different way, a completely different mindset, different cultures, okay? So this is almost like ripping apart the organization. Yeah, it's almost like a complete tectonic plate, which could end up in like as a volcano. Are you familiar with the Forrester report? I think it was a year or 2 years ago now, 3 years ago. They call the water scrum fall. Okay, so what they were saying is that in looking at many organizations that declare themselves to be using Agile or being Agile, what they really were finding was that many of them, what they had was traditional thinking, traditional decision making, still very hierarchical, still very compartmentalized in the way that traditional teams did when they were waterfall. Line management, reporting lines, and all these things. Then we went into a Scrum, because they argued that the Agile was Scrum was the most prevalent Agile method, which had a complete different of working. Yeah, and then when the Scrum team finished, they went back. They sent they basically went back into a traditional way of thinking in terms of like in the areas of support and maintenance. And these vertical lines, what we have created was huge or very important chasms between within the organization. So what before may have been not particularly good, but everybody understood waterfall process. Now we had a break somewhere in the middle called Agile. And the argument was that that's what we were seeing. When we talk about Agile fragile, that's what they were arguing about. Okay? Is that okay?
What did you first call it?
Water scrum fall.
Yeah, okay, I thought you said water jar.
No. Water scrum fall, sorry. Okay? So I will argue that if we want, these will create a lot of distance between different teams. It will create the resistance between people and essentially fragility, okay? So what we argue is that if we want to achieve a good lasting adoption of or change, what we need to do is not just an adoption, it's a transformation. It's quite a deep transformation. Oops. Sorry, I just lost. And then we have to really look at people and culture, because it's people and culture that are going to make the organization work. Do you use in your organizations this thing about the business said something, or the business has decided something? I absolutely hate that. Who is the business if not me and the rest of my colleagues? It's almost this, ethereal thing down there that has a brain of its own that no one can control. I'm the business. I'm part of it. Yeah, it's people, and it's the people, and it's the culture, it's the way we behave. Okay. Have you seen William Schneider's business cultures? So basically, talk about culture is what he says, like how culture is how do we do things around here in order to succeed. Okay. So in the vertical axis, we're talking about reality-oriented or possibility-oriented. And in the horizontal axis is whether we are company-oriented, impersonal, or people-oriented. So he was talking about the control culture, where we say that we succeed by getting and keeping control. We have a collaboration culture, okay? And in here, we succeed by working together. So some of the typical things that you hear about is partnerships and trusts, egalitarians, teams, people. If we were looking at the cultivation culture, that would be that where we said that we succeed by growing people and we fulfill a vision. Okay? So we talk about dedication, creativity, purpose, faith, letting things evolve. Okay? And finally, we have a competence culture, where we say that we succeed by being the best. So we talk about professionalism, meritocracy, craftsmanship, software craftsmanship, efficiency, expertise, all these things. What do you think of these cultures? Which cultures of these would you say, or which culture would you say is Agile friendly?
Can you say something more about the difference between reality-oriented and possibility?
So this is, we're looking a lot about fact. And this is much more about the possibilities and options, I think. If we try to map the Agile Manifesto, the values and the principles, the vast majority of them finish there in those three cultures. Yeah? Interestingly, where do we most organizations, where do they start from? Most organizations start from a control culture, command and control, traditional organizations, very hierarchical, very management driven. Okay? So when we talk about change, and change at the levels that we talk about, a lean Kanban change, going towards agile, things like that, effectively what we're talking about is making the organization, or the way the organization thinks, lives, reacts, behaves, on the journey that goes from potentially that command and control to somewhere of these other cultures. Are you okay with that? Okay. That is a really, really difficult, that is the really difficult journey. Okay? And when we say many times about we're going to start doing Scrum right now, or we're going to do Kanban right now, or Kanban, leave it out there. When we start doing this, we're going to adopt Agile, we are talking about making that a very big leap, which can be quite big. What do you think Kanban fits? Collaboration saying here? Yeah. I would argue that Kanban could work anywhere there, because what we're talking in Kanban, many times it says, start where we are now. Yeah? And then start, pursue incremental evolutionary change. Yeah? And wherever we're going as change, we can start from anywhere, potentially. If I map to Kanban in this thing, where do you think it will be? From a change perspective. And this can be controversial. I will put it as the arrow. Because we will use many times Kanban as the way we go the evolutionary change. It can help us move our culture as well, from the change perspective. Okay? And where we go, we could be going from a control to a competence. It could be going, when an organization abandons, for example, Agile, and they want to establish a traditional framework again, it could be going that way. But it's about how do we manage that change? Start where we are now. Where are we moving towards? Okay? So we say like lean Kanban or Kanban approach to change. Start where we are now. Agree to pursue incremental change, bit by bit. Okay? Something that we can make part of our collective journey with all of us. Initially respect all the current roles. Don't try to create straight away new roles. And then encourage all acts of leadership at all levels. Make sure that people make this part of the collective journey, that we're all part of this change. Yeah? So then what do we use to transform, to do the change or transform to Agile? Okay? What I will say is like, use the frameworks, the techniques, and the practices that suit your context today. Okay? There is a lot of method fundamentalism these days that says that you can only do one thing. Okay? So many times what I say is beware the fundamentalist. Okay? And it's, or any other process fundamentalist, okay? And it's this thing about, many times when we start a change program, first we say we're going to adopt Agile, we're going to adopt Scrum. Everything has to be done as a Scrum. It has to be perfectly following what this says in the book, even if it doesn't work in the organization yet, or whether the organization needs to be somewhere else in the future. Okay? So I think we need to start where we are today. We need to use the techniques, the frameworks, whatever we need to do to make it work for us, to get us on that journey and get us better and better and better, okay? Rather than just try to impose a new system, which may or may not work for us right now, okay? So I said that do not just adopt the practices. I think we need to transform everything along the way, one small step at a time, one by one. So Essential delivery, delivery enables that we see. I might be wrong. This is my experience. This is what I normally see when I meet good teams, very, very good teams. For me, those teams have a completely, they have uncompromising quality. That doesn't mean that they do the utmost quality. That means that they agree what the quality level for what they are doing is going to be, and they do not compromise it then. Yeah? If I need to build a very utilitarian car, I don't need to bring the quality, I do not need to bring the quality of a Formula One. Yeah? But if I'm going to do a utilitarian car, I'm going to do that car at the quality that we agreed, without compromising it. Is that okay? Yeah? They have excellent product management. So we've seen today things like portfolio Kanban, and we have seen a lot of ways of how we can get an organizational way of treating how we do our products, how do we deliver value for our organization. I said product management, I didn't say product ownership. Being controversial, I mean, I think product ownership is almost becoming a new bottleneck, a new waste in organizations. And I think it was Dave Snowden this morning, he was saying about get your customers to do your analysis and do your stories and things like that. It was Dave Snowden, wasn't it? I lost track now. I think it was great. Then ensure that we have very, very robust testing. It's incredible the amount of organizations that are doing, are adopting Agile or adopting, they're doing change, and they don't go into any sort of any sort of good engineering. They don't, I've seen lots and lots of things that they are struggling, and they say, for example, Scrum doesn't work for us, Kanban doesn't work for us. And what they're doing is that they're not doing testing, they're not doing continuous integration, they're not doing the right engineering. And what they're not doing essentially is software craftsmanship. They don't have pride in what they do. Or the organization is not helping them doing it. But they are part of the organization, essentially. Okay, so just a repeat of, for me, the essential transformation enablers is the evolution, that's part of the people, it's part of culture. We have to make it a collective journey, and it helps us many times to have an experienced coach inside the organization to help us do it. That's it. That's me, Jose Casal. That's my Twitter handles and everything, and I'm part of a BCS Agile. I work as a Scrum coach, Scrum Master, I'm a Scrum Product Owner, do Kanban training and Agile Project Management training as well. So, thank you very much. And any questions or thoughts, disagreements?
The point about adopting incremental change, I think that's controversial perhaps, because in some of these methods, the different elements and processes are designed to be mutually self-supporting. So it isn't the tendency that the organisation will adopt the ones that are culturally easiest, and then kind of stick halfway and not do the rest.
There is certainly a risk that the organization adopts starts adopting only part of our methods, and this is where we see that the Scrum bats and so on. Yes, okay. But I think it's important the organization that understands what are the problems, where they are today, really understand where they are today, what are the most immediate problems, and how they can then get on the journey to improve it. Okay? They might be implementing half of Scrum, or half of the SDM, or half of whatever. Yeah. If they are implementing those in order to improve and to get forward somewhere, that's okay. That's a good start. Keep going. The problem is that many times they lose patience and they abandon it, and they never get that continuous evolution going on. Yeah. But I was saying when I did the Kaizen, I didn't establish, or I don't think we should establish a final desired state, which is the end goal, because along the way we could be finding the opportunity to do something else which could be even better for us. Do you know what I mean? Have I answered that? question?
I think so, yes.
So there is a risk that by only doing part, they are not getting all the benefits, absolutely right. But by trying to do everything, they might actually be disrupting the organization too much as well. So small steps and make it part of a journey, maybe a better way for the organization. Anyone agrees or disagrees with that?
I think I would agree with your point and the graph that you sort of showed around the J curves and about getting from somewhere to somewhere better and not necessarily aiming for a particular place because it might change.
It might change.
So, I found that quite an interesting one.
It's a couple of questions. Can I get Clifford first? He was first.
I think the question that was asked about, do you implement a fragment of something or do it in one jump because of the rules? So it's a very interesting and important one. I mean, if something needs to be a coherent whole to work, importing half would probably just discourage people. The issue is, what are these atomic elements? Of course, the vendors of method X are going to say that method X is and I think it's a judgment call. I have some views on certain things that shouldn't be messed with, quite how to be cavalier with others. And I think the trick is experiment, just see.
And
The
understand.
ability to fail is fundamental.
Absolutely, and understand where we are now as well. Because I mean, sometimes we choose the method, we choose the tools as well, without really understanding where we are now and what's going to be, how we can make our world better. Actually, we make sometimes decisions, whatever those are, that are not aligned to help us get better. Thank you.
It's pretty much following on from what we were saying, that there's a Kaizen process that you might want to go through, but it has to be based upon we are here, we'd like to get here, not the end state, but the next state, and then use your experiment to validate if we make it, if we didn't make it, why didn't we make it, and then have that feedback. But it has to be transparent, it has to be some way to determine, yes, we made it or no, we haven't.
Absolutely.
And this is what.
Yeah. But I think it's important that those steps are all small enough.
Yeah, small steps.
Smaller steps that we can easily, in a way, reach them, move forward, assess that we are doing it okay, keep going.
But there's also the ability to make sure it's not suboptimal, like you're talking about, which is that if you're going to optimize aspects of your delivery that may not work, it may be good to try and work out how do you get incremental funding for a particular project that is then delivered. Try and take it through the whole organisation and within the slice, as opposed to just trying to pick a particular functional area.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Okay.
Any other questions or another coffee break? Thank you very much. Thank you.